In this video, I'll be referring to budget templates and forms. You can access these forms by clicking on the link on the screen or in the description of this video. Now, whenever someone talks to you about financial fitness, it's important to know who they are and what are they trying to sell you. This is a presentation by Homewise. We're a nonprofit organization. We have been in Santa Fe for 30 years, and our goal is home ownership. So often in these power hours, we're going to reference things that apply to saving for a home. But the things we're going to talk about can be applied towards if you're saving for retirement, you're saving for your education, or you're saving for a vacation. Financial fitness is the ability to make informed judgments and effective decisions about the way you make, spend, and save your money. So we're going to be giving you tools so you'll be able to make informed judgments and decisions about your money. That's what the Financial Fitness Power Hour series is about. Well, we don't call it a budget anymore, okay? We call it a spending plan or a spending savings plan. Budget's old school. Because if I was to ask, just, show of hands, from this side of the room to the other, okay? So who are the people who just love to budget, right? People just love to budget. Any show of hands? Am I the only nerd? Probably, right? If I was to say love to budget, probably not many of you out there. But on the other end, don't even want to be bothered. Can't keep track of my money, don't know where it comes and goes. If you were on this end, probably very few people over here. We're kind of all in the middle, right? There's kind of a balance. It's, we kind of know how much money we make, right? We get our paycheck, we know how much money we make, and we kind of know where our spending is going, how much we spend at the grocery store and eating out. We kind of have a ballpark idea, but we don't know the specifics. The important thing about creating a budget or a spending savings plan is you need to have a plan for your money. Because when life happens and emergencies happen, do you have money in savings to help out? Or do you end up relying on credit cards? It's important to know where your money is going in your life. A budget is a plan for saving and spending, right? It's creating a plan for how you're using your money. And we always say, you control the budget. The budget doesn't control you. So this is something you're going to take charge of today, starting today. Everyone has a plan for your money, so you need to have one too. Mike Lofton, who heads up Homewise, that's his saying. Especially it comes the first time of the year, people start to get their tax returns. And what do you see constantly? All these advertisements on television and in the newspapers, everyone has a plan for how you should spend your money, right? So you need to make one too. Shouldn't just let it be left up to chance on where your money is going to go when you have extra money. But why should you budget, right? Why should you budget? Because you need to learn to live within your available income. We tell a great story here in our class about one of the women who created this financial fitness class, and she lived with her grandmother. And back in the day, they didn't have credit cards, so it was her and her mother living with her grandmother, and her grandmother just had an envelope system. You might have heard about that, like people that live within an envelope system. But, one envelope, the most important thing was what? Right, her rent money. Rent money went into one. She had another envelope. Second envelope was what? Right, her bills and groceries and things like that. But then she had a third little envelope, and what was that? Right, people always want to say savings, but she didn't have any money for savings. In the third little envelope, she had her bingo money, right? Because you got to have a little bit of fun. So we're going to do a budget, but you're in charge of the budget, and you're going to make sure that it works for you, and it's not like some fast, strict diet thing that you're doing, but it's just a sensible way to allocate where your money's going. But you want to live within your means. Because you want to decide how you're spending your money. I mean, it's not only now, but you're talking about the future. You want to analyze your spending so that you can put money away into savings. And where's that money going to come from? You have to budget things in order to make cuts. But what are you going to spend your money on now, but also into the future? How are you going to be spending your money? You want to stay out of financial difficulty by preparing for emergencies, right? If you can build up an emergency fund, if you can build up emergency reserves and have money in a reserve savings account, then when life happens, you don't have to put it on a charge card and build up debt, right? You can use that money in emergencies by taking it from your savings account. And then ultimately, the reason you're creating this budget, if you take the whole series of power hours, is because we all have goals. We all have things we're saving money for. We all have a goal. And every goal usually takes money of some kind, whether you want to take a trip or put money towards retirement or have money for a down payment on a home. It takes money to do most things that we want to do. Well, where's that money going to come from? It comes from our budget, comes from our spending savings plan. So we need to analyze our spending to see what money we can put away towards savings. Be smart about your savings. This is really, if we were to create a budget for ourselves, it's because we want to have a space at the bottom, right? On our budget, our list of things, our list of expenses where we put our money each month. We want to start putting money away towards savings, right? Because we have a savings goal, something we want to achieve. So you want to be smart and you want to take it and make it automatic. If you can, the old saying is, there it is, pay yourself first, right? Pay yourself first is the old adage when it comes to savings. So make it automatic. Maybe if you're at work, you have automatic deposit on your payroll check. Rather than having it all go to your checking account, maybe you take a small amount and have it go towards a savings account. You can ask your human resource department to help you do that. You bring in the account information and they can take a small amount, put it towards your savings. You could set it up with your own bank. You could ask your bank, can you set it up automatically, in the first of the month that you transfer X amount of dollars from my checking account to my savings account? Or you could just do it yourself, where you just walk in and it's like a bill. You write out a check or just go into the bank and fill out the slips, but you make a transfer from your checking into your savings account. You want it to be automatic if you can, but you want to make sure you do it every month. Pay yourself first. The key thing about this goal is make it realistic. If you feel like you're living paycheck to paycheck now, then don't overextend your goal, but try to figure out what it is you need to be saving for and how much you can free up in your budget, and start small. Maybe you're paying down debt, so as debts go down, maybe you can add more and more to savings, but make it realistic, even if it's just $5 every paycheck. If you were to take $5 every paycheck and put it into a special savings account, you're not going to miss that money. Because if you're like most people, you just, whatever you have, you're spending. And if you just took $5 and put that aside, you're not going to notice it. Then maybe it's 10, then maybe 15, and then it can grow from there. So, budgeting. Now, I'm a nerd. I love to budget. Call me kooky, call me crazy. I use Quicken, so I never have cash in my pocket. I just use a debit card, and I keep track of I have all my receipts in my pocket. I could show you my wallet right now. Don't tempt me, I will. But I can show you my wallet. I have no cash in there. All I have are receipts. That's all I have. I have receipts, and I go and I log each expense into my thing, because that's what it is to create a budget. It's going to take you about a month, because you're going to have to calculate what you're spending. So here are the steps, real quick. So you want to establish a savings goal, right? So you want to give yourself some goal that you're saving for. Are you looking for $5 from your budget, or do you want $50 a month to go towards savings? What's your savings goal? How much money are you looking for to put into savings? Get that idea in your head. We're going to calculate income. That's the first step. And then we're going to make a budget for a month. We're going to analyze it. We're going to track our expenses. We're going to evaluate all our spending. We're going to talk about that. Because then we need to know where we can refine our budget, maybe cuts we can make and things like that. And then you want to make sure you use the whole family, because everybody has to be involved. And that's why it's important if you have a goal, like something you're saving for, whether it be a vacation or saving up for a down payment on a house because you're going to move into your own home. You want everybody to know why it is that you're budgeting or why it is that you're dieting, right? What is it you're saving up for? You want the whole family involved. So let's take a couple of look at a couple things here. I'm going to go back and forth. So have your handout handy. On page 3, the first thing I want you to look at, just real quickly, take a look at page 3, and the first column is, if you were to look through all of these expenses here, right? If you were to look through all of these expenses, and you can stop the tape at any time if you want to sit down and fill this out now. But it's important to write in there, what do you think you're spending? Where do you think you're spending your money? You can probably calculate your income in there, ballpark it, right? You could put in, how much about your income is. You can put that in there. But then as you were to look through here, rent's probably pretty much the same. Maybe you know what your cell phone bill is or the cable bill. But when it comes to groceries and eating out and dining out for lunches, during the week for lunch, babysitting, lunch money for the kids, how much are you giving? Would you really know exactly how much? If you were to just go through, take a second there, circle the things you really don't know how much it is. And then the rest you can write in if you have a ballpark. Because then what we're going to do is we're going to actually track our expenses for a month and put that in the middle column. But this will give you an idea of where your money's going. What's key, before we figure out where all the money's going, is let's figure out what's the money coming in. On page 4 is calculating your income. And this is something you want to take a little bit of time with and really analyze calculating your income. Now, maybe you're only paid twice a month, right? The 1st and the 15th. You're only paid twice a month. And so that's pretty set. So $1,000 each paycheck, it is $2,000 a month. Maybe you're somebody who gets self-employed income. Maybe you're working on tips. Maybe you have commission. So it can be a little trickier to calculate what your income is. So an important thing to do is read through here and read through the different scenarios, because if you're in a kind of a fluctuating income, what you might want to do is analyze, a couple of months and get an average, or look at your taxes that you just did in January, like if you've been doing this for a while. Maybe you could analyze your income from the past year and kind of get a ballpark estimate of what it is a month, because it's important to know your income. The tricky thing is if you're like most people, you're probably paid every 2 weeks. And let's say you get $1,000 every 2 weeks. If you get paid every 2 weeks and you get $1,000 on your paycheck, right, your net income is $1,000, then how much do you make a month? Our initial response is we always want to say, well, isn't that $2,000 a month? The trick is, though, if you're paid every 2 weeks, you actually get paid 26 times in the year, right? Because there's 52 weeks in the year. So if you're paid every 2 weeks, you get 26 paychecks. And that's the tricky thing of sometimes people will say, God, I had so much money this month. I don't know, I just did something right. And they just think like, because they don't have a budget, they just think, oh, I just had all this extra money. Everything was great. And then the next month they're like, oh, I'm behind. I ran out of money. I don't know what happened. Because when you're paid every 2 weeks, there's 2 months out of the year where you actually get 3 paychecks. Three paychecks 2 times a year. So if you were to calculate your income, right, $1,000, but being paid every 2 weeks, you're actually at $26,000. $26,000 for the year. Divide that by 12, and that's $2,166. So there's actually $166 more in your actual budget. So this is a tricky thing here. When you're going to calculate all of your expenses and list them out, there are certain things like, haircuts, insurance for the car. There are certain things that you pay for that you're not paying for every month. So one thing I like to do when I'm creating my budget is I like to calculate what those expenses are, like haircuts, and you can tell it doesn't really cost me very much. I don't have to do it very often. But haircuts and auto insurance and things like that, those are just so sporadic. I don't want to work those into my budget per se. But I've added them all up, and I know what my 2 extra paychecks are. So I keep track of those extra paychecks, and I just take that whole paycheck and I put it into a savings account. And then when those sporadic bills come up, that money comes from there. So in my budget, I'm actually budgeted to a more realistic number, which is that $2,000, not that extra $166 each month that's spread out through the year, but just make it general and more easy to comprehend. But calculate what your income is, because that's the important step. So that's going to go at the top, your net income. Now your household might be a little bit different. Maybe you have some Social Security income. Maybe you're living on a pension. Maybe you have alimony, child support, disability. All of that is income. That's all money coming into the household. And we're using the whole family. So maybe there's one of the kids, mows lawns or does babysitting. So that's part of the income for the family, right? You might want to add that in there. And then maybe that's how you calculate what their allowance is. But you want the whole family involved. You want to calculate what's all of the net income or what you're catching into the household. That's at the top there. Now, how are we going to track our expenses? This is the tricky part. Like I said, I just use a debit card. I keep track of all of my receipts, and then I enter in all my expenses. Now, we have a couple of forms you can use here. Page 6 and 7. So page 6 shows you one filled out, and 7's an empty one. We always have one example where it's filled out and then a blank one for you to use as well. So you could track your expenses kind of like on a piece of paper. Like I said, I use Quicken. There's a lot of programs out there you can use. But you want to add in, and you want to really, when you start out doing this, do it every single day. Every single day or every 2 to 3 days at the most, because otherwise those receipts start to stack up and it gets a bit overwhelming. But you want to write in, where did I spend my money? What category would I put it in? You want to log in everything every single day. And sometimes you can even start out, right, by looking at your most recent bank statement. Sometimes the savings goal that I have with people, they come here to Homewise and they need to save, say, $400 a month towards their down payment for their home. And I've already analyzed a bank statement of theirs, and I've made some little highlighted notes on their bank statement, because they'll say, I don't know where I'm going to get $400, but also, oh, well, here's your bank statement. I did some highlighting. You realize you spent $83 at Starbucks last month? And I added up all of the restaurants, and there was $399. So where would you get $400? Like, that right there is a blaring example of who would think $83 a month on Starbucks? But it happens. People spend a lot of money. But here's a tracking expense, right? You're going to keep a log for a month. Track all your expenses. Another thing you can do to keep track of your money and how you're budgeting your money is to do it by pay period. You know, maybe you realize, like, oh, on the first of the month I get one, and then the second paycheck I get each month, I'm going to pay my rent here, my water bill here, cell phone bills here. You could plot this out. Now, personally, I'm not a fan of this method. I just have to say, I'm not a fan. But if it works for you, that's what's best. And there's an example there. I like this one here, the month calendar. This works easier for me. You get those calendars. Mine has a bunch of kitty cats on it. They always drop them off here at the office. Like, there's all these free calendars that you get. You probably have one at home. So if you have one of those calendars, take it. And what I do is the whole year is already filled out. I've done a yellow box on all of my paychecks. Like, I know when I'm getting all of my paychecks. I've highlighted it throughout the year. It's all there. So I know where my extra paychecks are coming up that are going to go towards savings. I know when that check comes in, that goes into my savings account. But I've plotted it out each month. And I know in the beginning of the month, I have my cell phone bill. And then the second day, I know I have to pay my mortgage. Even though it comes out on the 5th, I've got it on the, right on the 1st. So you can plot out when all your bills are due. And what's easier here is if you've highlighted the Fridays where you're getting your paychecks, it helps you balance out of, oh, I've only got so much left from this paycheck to pay these bills and so much from this one, and that's when I'm going to pay these bills. So I like this. This works really well for me. But again, whatever works for you, you have to make it work. But there's a blank one of those. So after you've done this for a month, right? After you've used the expense tracker and you add up all of the money that you've spent, I mentioned we're going to go back and forth on this thing, right? So back to page 3. After you've tracked your expenses for a month, you're going to make your monthly budget. So you're going to write into this middle column now. You're going to write into the middle column how much you're actually spending. And what'll be interesting for you when you come back to this after a month is what did you write in for what you thought you'd spend in groceries, right? It was like, oh, probably $300. And then all of a sudden you tracked it for a month and you realize, like, oh, I spent like $650. You were going to track all of your expenses. And then the key thing here is look to see, add up all your expenses from the month and how much did you spend. And now what you want to do is look at that figure. And let's say that it's, $4,200. But what do we know from our income? Our income's only, $2,000. And now we've spent all this extra money. And that explains to people why you're in credit card debt. You can see you're constantly spending more than you're making. So this is the eye opener here. But in analyzing your expenditures, you'll be able to know where you can make cuts. Now, this sounds a little vague. So we've got this great example in here, which is really fun to do with the whole family. It's a fun little exercise you can do. So we have this imaginary family, the Martinez family. We can read all about them on page 13. All right, Henry and Gail Martinez. So Henry and Gail Martinez, we have their little story here, and we have their budget little story about them. So let's kind of review this. This is a fun thing to do, to go ahead and stop and kind of do it as a group exercise and talk about some of these things together. It's a lot of fun. But we'll just do it quickly here. So Henry and Gail Martinez, let's read a little bit about them. So at the top there of page 13. So they've been married for 3 years and they have a child. Now, their savings goal is to buy a home in 1 year. So they want to set aside a reserve savings account to cover 2 months of expenses. And they already have $3,000 set aside in savings. So they need the following to meet their savings and home ownership goals. So that's so clear and specific. What is that an example of? A SMART goal, another power hour to check out. But you want to create a very SMART goal, very specific. This is what they want to save. So they've got $3,245 for the down payment and closing costs that they need to have. And they want $3,000 in reserves. So that's a total of $6,245, right? They've already got $3,000 set aside, so their savings goal is $3,245 for the year. $3,245 for the year. So we need to calculate, you need to do this math here. $3,245 divided by 12 months would be how much? That's their savings goal. Remember, we talked about creating a savings goal. So they have a specific amount that they want to put aside each month. So they're going to review their budget on page 14. On page 14, they're going to review this to figure out where they're going to come up with that $325. But let's look at some of the things they spend their money on and see if any of these ring out to you. So the first thing is they have food and childcare. And one thing that stands out here for most people is they spend $700 a month on groceries, and they often buy frozen foods and pre-cooked items. And that's one thing that you'll start to analyze. You start to analyze everything that you're spending your money on. And here's something to think about. Frozen foods and pre-cooked items. I taught a class the other day, and this guy was saying that he spends a lot of money on frozen foods because that's what he brings to work. Like, and he buys them on sale, which is good, but he tends to spend a lot of money on frozen foods because that's what he brings for lunch. But then we started talking as a group about, well, what I do is like, I make a decent sized dinner, and then there's always a small portion that goes into a little container that I take to work, and it's going to be my lunch at some point during the week, right? There's other ways you can do with food. But frozen items and pre-cooked items tend to cost more money as well, right? If you buy a cooked roasted chicken, I don't know because I don't buy them, but they're more expensive than if you just buy a regular chicken and cook it yourself. And then you can put the herbs and spices on it you want it yourself. But food is a big one to look at and analyze where you're spending your money. Do you buy things on sale and fresh? They have some credit card debt. And if you watch the Power Hour on debt reduction, they could eliminate some of this credit card debt would be a good thing. They have their car payments. Cable TV is a big one. So people talk about cable TV. And a lot of people have cut the cord, but cable can be expensive, like $100 a month. But some people, they love their sports, right? Or they have the whole family over to their house on the weekend to watch sports. So some people need cable, some people don't. But if you can cut the cord and just have Hulu or Netflix or some small monthly expense, that's a big place where you can save some money. They have other things on here like entertainment. They like to go out to dinner a lot. They've got magazines. This usually gets a giggle in class because, does anybody really buy magazines anymore? Henry and Gail Martinez do, right? They like to buy magazines. She buys 4 a month. He buys 2. So they're spending $30 a month on magazines. But it's something, if you were to analyze your budget, maybe there's something you can find where you're spending money on something silly that maybe you could cut. But magazines, you can go to the library and read them for free. I always say if you go to the dentist or doctor's office, as long as you don't mind reading last year's magazines, you can read them there. It's free. There are options you have. A lot of things are online. So anyway, but we can analyze this as a group, right? Analyze their spending and ways they're spending their money. And we've got the exact figures already figured out here for a month. So we can actually go through their expenses and see where they're spending money. Pocket money, entertainment, dining out. People tend to do that a lot. And that adds up. Here's the key thing I mentioned earlier, which is key to this. After tracking their monthly expenses, their total expenses are $4,202. That's how much the Martinez family spends each month. But their net income from all the household money that they get is only $3,950, right? So they're spending more than they make. And that's why the credit card continues to go over, right? So this is the first thing they have to do is figure out how to only be spending $3,950. And then next they have to figure out where can they make cuts to put towards their savings goal at $3,245 from the first page here. So what's your savings goal? That's what you have to figure out. What's your savings goal? How much is that a month, right, that you need to save each month? Track your expenses, track your budget, and then figure out where you can make the changes. And this is something that you have to do over time as well, right? It's not just a one-time thing. You're going to evaluate your spending choices when you're looking at your budget. What are the things you need? What are the things you want? Or what are you spending eating out, during the week for lunch and eating out at night? Pocket cash that just disappears, right? Keep track of that. You do have to refine your budget over time. So this is a process that's going to take a couple of months, really, because you're going to do it for a month, track your expenses, analyze your spending, right? And then after a couple of months, go back and see, have you stuck within your goal of only spending $400 a month on groceries, right? Have you stuck within that goal? Where can you refine those spendings? Include the whole family. So you can do this. You can definitely do this. And I have just a couple of tips here on page 15 that you can read through. Ways to save money in, a change jar, exchange clothes with friends. There's various things you can do. But here's a key one I'm going to leave you with that I like to use. If you're one of those people who likes their Starbucks coffee, right? You could add up how much you spend on Starbucks. And then what you want to do is say to yourself, okay, the first thing I'm going to do right now, I know, even without keeping track of this budget, is I'm going to get myself a gift card, right? A prepaid card. They're free. Go to Starbucks and I'm going to put $25 on that card. And I'm going to limit myself to $25 a month at Starbucks. All I'm ever going to do is use this gift card when I want my Starbucks coffee. And then I'm going to use that. And then once it's gone, I can't go to Starbucks anymore that month. So there's your first free tip, but we have others for you listed there. And that is how you create a budget.